Petrol prices are on the rise, back over $3 a litre across the country. More fuel and road taxes are on the way.
To be poured into potholes, other maintenance, public transport and more roads across the country.
How do we pay for this?
Here's part of the government's answer. Multiple hikes in petrol tax and road user charges. A litre of petrol would go up 4 cents a year, 12 cents more expensive in 3 years' time.
It's minor. And it's necessary.
You know, I think that is manageable in the context of the significant investment we're making in roads.
So much for bread and butter. With Labor, it's more expensive petrol and maybe a few cents off your carrots. Does he think it's appropriate for the government to increase petrol tax in the midst of a cost of living crisis?
When it comes to transport, it is important to be able to say how one will pay for what one is doing. Every cent of Fed and RUC goes into our transport network.
Is he aware that in July next year, the Reserve Bank forecasts that inflation will remain out of control, out of its target band, so New Zealanders will be paying higher prices across the economy? And why, in that context, does he also want to increase the amount of tax on their petrol?
Mr. Speaker, to reiterate the answer that I have just given, this is how we pay for roads, rail, public transport, walking and cycling in New Zealand, Mr. Speaker.
Is the Minister of Finance aware that the New Zealand Super Fund, KiwiSaver Fund providers, iwi, want to invest their funds in infrastructure, and why would he prefer to tax New Zealanders more to deliver it?
Mr. Speaker, because it's not a magic money tree, Mr. Speaker. At some point, the consumers of New Zealand pay. If we're going to build roads, if we're going to build rail, if we're going to have public transport, it has to be paid for.
Does he recall a few months ago standing next to the Prime Minister as he reduced the fuel tax excise and saying that that was necessary due to the cost of living crisis? And why has he completely flip-flopped by saying he'll now increase petrol tax despite the cost of living crisis persisting?
Mr. Speaker, the rate of inflation in New Zealand has been coming down. It is now down to 6%. We are staging the increase in the fuel excise duty and RUC to take that into account. What we're also doing, Mr. Speaker, is we're being responsible with the government's finances, and we're saying to New Zealanders, this is how we pay, to help pay for this transport.
What does he think would have more impact on the typical family budget? Having to pay $7 more every time they fill up, as would be the case under his excise tax plan, or the proposals of some political parties that they would give more money to supermarkets for a GST reduction that might reduce the cost of apples by a few cents?
It's about a balance, it's about a responsible approach.
Why would New Zealanders trust that more dollars paid for them at the pump to pad his tax revenues would actually deliver a single road when his government has been so deficient in the delivery of any major transport project?
Mr. Speaker, every single cent of fuel excise duty and road user charges goes directly to public transport, to roads, to rail. That's how we fund the system.